Welcome to the Answers Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Today I speak with KC Chohan, and I think for the entrepreneurs that listen to this show, this is a great value add. He's a writer for Forbes magazine, a public speaker, and an experienced CFO. And what we talk about today is about how to scale your business, understanding financial statements, the difference between profit and cash flow, what are KPIs and how they can help you improve, and even just basic business practices. So I hope you enjoy the show and the experience that KC brings to the table. It's a wonderful discussion. Hello and welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Oftentimes I talk about the value of social media and how we can leverage those tools to us. They are basically free. I know that there's some good ad tools and marketing schematics that you can pay for. But one of the things that I've really been talking about and falling in love with lately is the LinkedIn platform and how valuable that is. And it really is a great tool if you're looking to connect through business or in opportunities. And by the way, they've got a great job search tool there as well if you're looking for jobs. But, I've been on it a lot more these days, received a lot of messages, and recently somebody had reached out to me. His name is KC Chohan, and I've got him on the line today to talk about his business and his background and how he can add some value to all the entrepreneurs out there. So, KC, thank you for being on the line today.
No, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on the show.
Well, you've got a very interesting background, and we might as well just dig into, it's easy to tell you've got an accent, so clearly there's probably an interesting story of where you came from and how you got to the United States. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, it was a little interesting. So if you can imagine a kid growing up in the countryside of England, excuse me, sorry about that, lots of beautiful green fields, rolling hills, running around in the mud with my dog. Basically, that was me as a child, hopelessly curious and with a big desire to grow, which kind of led me into business and specifically big business, solving big problems, and just pushing to my limits. I always like to kind of push to the edge to see how far I could go. That ended up with me getting a degree in business and finance, because I thought those two things combined would be a really good skill set to help understand what makes a business thrive. And didn't really anticipate I would get into accounting or have my own CFO firm at that point. Then I went into kind of the direction of being more of a traditional, boring CPA/accountant, working on books and which it kind of makes me viscerally cringe when I mention that, because it's just terribly boring and it's not really aligned with my kind of unique disposition. But that said, I had the job before I'd finished university. It was an immediate paycheck, so it was very hard to kind of turn down at that time. So, as you can probably imagine, being an accountant is kind of a little bit miserable, doing the same thing day in, day out. Very quickly realized that I had so much more to offer than just hiding in the books. So at that point, it was very clear to me that I kind of had to make a change and realize that, it wasn't aligned with my personality. And one thing I strongly believe in is that to be successful, people need to be in a place where they thrive. So from there, as you can already tell, I'm a very outgoing person rather than an introvert. So I wanted to become an entrepreneur and understand how to build a sustainable business. So unlike most of my friends from university that then moved on to kind of London or Dubai or Hong Kong, I worked at this local firm, moved back to my hometown in the northeast of England, worked for the accounting firm, and, it wasn't really a great fit for me. So I then switched and made the move into like a big corporate company. So I was working for Schlosser, which is a Fortune 500 company. And worked my way up from the bottom after 8 long years with Schlosser. two relocations, one international relocation out to Los Angeles. This is kind of where I was just constantly pushing and driving to offer more value, do more, say yes. And that ended up with me internationally transferring all the way to Los Angeles, which was, one of the best things that's ever happened to me. But then after almost a decade of working with Flowserve and doing years of month-end close, cash flow analysis, budgets, forecasts, building systems and processes, it was time for a change. So by that time, I'd left Schlosser. They were doing around $4.7 billion in annual sales. So not too bad at all. But I just kind of got bored with corporate America, and it was very different in terms of they were more focusing on maximizing everything instead of optimizing, and they were more interested in perception over results. And my core focus and I'm more focused on results over perception. From then, I then went into the startup world, which is, completely different to working for a big billion-dollar company, working very closely with CEOs of smaller companies. But it was more hands-on, more hats to wear, a lot more open communication with marketing operations, which kind of allowed us to optimize not just systems, but how companies interacted with each other and kind of pulled in the same direction. So that ended up making such a big impact. And then I quickly realized that that's what I wanted to do, and then started my own firm in 2006, and we've been making a bigger impact. Realized that there's a real great sweet spot for CFO services and tax optimization for companies that are not just at the startup stage, but have actually got to that next level of kind of 1-2 million plus and hit that plateau because they don't have the systems in place and the tax optimization in place. So that's how we kind of help people understand their metrics, their financials, and really get a grip of what is going on in their businesses day to day based on the numbers and not based on kind of, hey, this is how I feel or this is what my gut feeling is, because a lot of the times at the beginning of startups, it's all hands on deck. There's no real structure in place and a lot of guessing. So we come in once a business is ready to kind of take it to the next level and get optimized.
Interesting. You've got a fascinating background, although you describe it as a little bit boring when you talk about accounting. What I'm curious about, KC, is those years as an accountant, those boring years, day after day. And by the way, I know a lot of accountants, it seems like these days, they love it or they hate it. But what things did you learn at that time that were foundational elements that help you in your business today? Because I think it's important to know as we go through our career path, all the things we learn along the way eventually play a much larger role. I think for the accountants of the world out there, maybe it might be helpful to know what foundational elements helped you today.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So the foundational elements at Flowserve, which was already, I think, around $2-3 billion company by the time I joined it, was the structure was set up in such a way we could very easily identify the units that were doing well versus the ones that weren't. So we had great metrics and scoreboards in place and standardization across the board. So each department would report on the same metrics, regardless of if they were, for instance, in my earlier companies, they were all in the UK and then Scandinavia as well, and then Europe before I transferred to America. But the metrics that we were initially calculating in year one, fair enough, there was more in year 8, but generally speaking, they were the indicators, the performance tools that were really the foundation of the business. So I would say one of the key things is to have a very good scorecard and to be able to understand all of those metrics, both financial and non-financial. Coming from a finance background, we put a hefty weight on the financial metrics, but also as equally important, if not probably more important, is the non-financial metrics, where you're looking at, headcount, turnover, as well as work in progress, your working capital cycle, your accounts receivable and payable days. So everything has a part to play, and it all is interconnected. So why wouldn't you want to see all that on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, depending on what type of metric it is?
So speaking of metrics and data, for the entrepreneurs out there that are very intimidated by accounting and the numbers of the business. I love the numbers because it tells me where I'm going and where I've been, and I like to overanalyze what they look like. But how do we educate or make entrepreneurs a little bit more comfortable with the numbers that they get presented with?
It's about having a good understanding. One of the things that's really helped us scale is the fact that we explain the numbers in a non-financial way. A lot of the times, finance people kind of get too over the top on the numbers, but are not as strong on the explanation side. If you've got even the best scorecard in the world, if you don't know how to read the scorecard, you're not really understanding your business. So in order to do that, you need to work with either a good finance person or get educated yourself, take some seminars or some classes to kind of get up to a level where you understand what the difference between good and bad is in your own industry for your own business.
It's funny, you talk about scorecard. Most of these guys that get intimidated by the finances that come through their businesses, they sure know how to keep a golf scorecard and exactly what level of par they are.
Absolutely.
You talk about this company you work for in the term of billions. And, I'm just curious, not to take anything away from the scale of that type of business, but, as we look at different jobs, especially in the accounting world or management world, and we start hearing data like, well, this company's doing $1 million or 10 million or 100 million or $1 billion, it's very intimidating when you start thinking about those numbers. But then you've got somebody that's very savvy with that, and they're like, well, it's just another number, it's just another comma or decimal point. Is it really is the reality there's big pressure that goes along with those numbers, or is it surmountable that you can actually work through that in the same format that you would on a smaller number?
Yeah, the bigger the number, the bigger the pressure, without any doubt, because the bigger the responsibility. So if you're dealing with a company that's 1 million versus 100 million versus 1 billion, the head count's a lot more. You're responsible for a lot more people, generally speaking. And the pressures are obviously going to increase because you've got more people to take care of, or at that point, if it's shareholders or you're publicly traded, as the company gets bigger, all of these things become more under a microscope. So it's important to kind of lay some really solid foundations and then allow yourself that platform to be able to scale to that next level. I don't think you should necessarily allow yourself to be psyched out by this, but yeah, on paper, it's just another zero. And from a finance perspective, that's all it is. It makes little difference whether it's 1 0, 2 zeros, or 3 zeros. But when you come to present and when the environment and when the people's needs are all different, and then the stakeholders that really dictate what the finance department does, that's where the additional pressures come in.
And what tools do you use or would you advise people to use to handle those types of pressures? Because I'm with you. With big numbers comes more pressure because of the accountability and the bodies, the jobs, et cetera. What tools do you have to help deal with the pressures?
So one of the more recent ones I've implemented with some of my clients is Traction. It's a book by Gino Wickman, but it's also like a business philosophy. It's fantastic, and I'd highly recommend that. Read the book, check out the tools that come along with that, and it really helps businesses scale at a probably, I would say, on the lower end, 10 plus people. But on the bigger end, you could go up to thousands of people. And it kind of helps the organization align together and pull in the same direction. So I think that's a very valuable tool that I'd recommend.
Yeah, I want to dig into some of the things that you